Hello friends, this is the continuation of part 1. In these lectures we are discussing about the static variables. So in the previous lecture we learned the what is the static variable and what is the use and how to define the static variable. Okay, now go further. Java static method. What is the static method? If you apply static keywords with any method, it is known as the static method. Number 1. Static method belongs to the class rather than the object of a class. Means you you can call the static method by the class name, or it is a class label method. It is not an object label method. A static method can be called without creating object of a class. It means a static method can be called by the class name. Number 3. A static method can access static data member and can change the value of it. Suppose take an example, Java program to get the queue of a given number using the static method. So here we define a calculate class and static method, and we are returning, if we are passing any number, it will give the result of the queue form. So calculate queue. We are calling this queue method by the help of the class. We need not to create any object for calling the static method. So it is showing the you can call the static method with the help of the class name. Let's I show you on the Eclipse IDE. Okay, now you can see that I am calling the queue method with the help of the class name. So in the calculate class we define a queue method which is static type, so we can call the static method with the help of the class. If we run, it will give the result. Okay, now if we don't define a method is a static, it will give the error. Now how will you call it? You can call by creating the object of calculate class and call the queue method on the object. Like you define a calculate c equal to new calculate. Okay, now by the help of the object you can call the queue method. Okay, so this is the benefit of the static methods. Static keywords, you can call the static method directly by the class name. Restrictions for the static method. There are two main restrictions for the static method. They are: number 1, a static method cannot use non-static data member or call non-static method directly. Number 2, this and super cannot be used in a static context. So let's see an example. If you define a class A, in the class A you define a non-static or non-static field equal to 40. So these non-static fields you cannot call, the static method cannot be use non-static data member. So main is the static method, and if you are trying to use a non-static field in the static method, it will not allow. Output is compile time error. Okay, let's I show you. Int a equal to 40, and if you will try to print a, it is giving error. It is showing change a to static, convert a to static. If you run this, you will get the error. Okay, what is the error? Cannot make a static reference to the non-static field. It means non-static field you cannot be accessed in the static area. Number 3 is Java static block. It is used to initialize the static data member. Instance initialization block is used to initialize the instance member variable. In the similar, static initialization block is used for static data member. Number 2. It is executed before the main method at the time of class loading. Before the main method, it executed. Example, suppose you have a class and in that class you define a static block and you run the program. So you will get the output. First it will execute the static block, then it will execute the main method. Okay, let's I show you. So first I will remove it. Okay, here I am printing execute main method. Okay, and here we are defining a static block. For defining a static block, static, then you can write anything. Okay, static block. Okay, now if you will run it, you can check. First it will execute the static block, then it will execute the main method. Number 4, Java static nested class. About static nested class we will discuss in the inner class section. So here I am dropping the static nested class. Okay, so now we will talk about the difference between class variable and static. Class variable means static variable and the instance variables in Java. Okay, so first, static variable. Class variables are declared with keyword static. Class variables or static variables are the same. So class variables defined with the keywords static. Instance variables are declared without static keywords. Number 2. Class variables are common to all instances of a class. These variables are shared between the object of a class. Means static variables is the common for all the object of a class and this variable is shared by all the object. Instance variables are not shared between the object of a class. Each instance will have their own copy of the instance variable. Number 3. As class variables are common to all objects of a class, changes made to these variables through one object will reflect in another. Means static variables is common for all the objects. So if you perform any change by using the any object, it will reflect to the all object. As each object will have its own copy of instance variables, changes made to these variables through one object will not reflect in another object. Next difference is class variables can be accessed using either class name or object reference. Instance variable can be accessed only through object reference. Now, execution flow of instance block, static block and constructor. This is a very bit difficult concept, but I will show you a very easy way. Execution flow of instance block and static block is suppose you have a static block, instance block and a constructor in a class. In a class or in a parent class as well and in a child class as well. Then what is the execution flow of these blocks? So first static block will be executed, then instance block executed, then constructor will be executed. Okay, here you can see we have defined a static. We take a class, my class, define a static block, okay, define a instance block, and define a constructor. When you will create a constructor, first it will execute the static block, then instance block, then constructor. So the output of this program will be static, instance or non-static block and my class constructor. Let's I show you on the Eclipse IDE. So here I have created a static block, instance block and constructor. So I can change the order. That is not the problem if you are thinking that. Okay. So in what order you have written, that is not the matter. Matter is that first it will execute the static block, then instance block, then constructor. So now we create a test class object, test t equal to new test. Okay, now just run it. So you can see the output: static block, instance block and constructor. So execution flow of static initialization block and instance initialization blocks when superclass and subclass are used in Java. Okay, now parents class also have a instance block, static block and subclass also have. Then what is the flow of execution? Okay, in this case, suppose these are the parent class, superclass and a child class. Parent class have a static block, instance block and constructor. And in the subclass also have a static block, instance block and constructor. Once you will create a subclass object, so the output will be first static block of upper class, then static block of the subclass, because first it will execute the static block whether it is present in superclass or subclass. If multiple static block is present in the superclass and subclass, then first it will complete static block of the parent class will execute, then it will execute complete or more than one static block present in the subclass, then it will execute them, then it will execute the superclass instance block, then it will call the superclass constructor, then it will call the subclass instance block and then subclass constructor. So let's I show you on the Eclipse IDE how the flow is going on in the parent and child class. Okay, now I create a class subclass, sorry, subclass parent. Okay, in this we define a okay parent static block, parent constructor and parent instance block. Okay, now we create the object for the subclass. So extends parents okay, now we are creating the subclass object. As you create a subclass object, first control goes to the check whether it has a parent class. Yes, it has a parent class. Then it will goes to the parent class. It will check the parent class has any static block. Yes, so it will execute it. Then control will come back to the child class and check there is any static block in the child class. Yes, so it will execute the child class static block. So every static block and static method will be loaded at the class loading time. class loading happened before the object creation. Okay, so now after that executing the static block of the subclass, now control will goes to the parent class again, and it will check there is any instance block in the parent class. Yes, so it will execute the parent class instance block. Then it will execute the parent class constructor. Then control comes in the child class and check there is any instance block in the child class. Yes, so it will execute it. Then it will execute the child class constructor. So now I will run. So I will get the output. Sorry, this will be parent static block. uh, okay, let's give me child 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 child. Okay, now you can see the output: parent static block, child static block, parent instance block, parent constructor, child instance block, and child constructor. So this is the flow of static instance and constructor in the parent and child class. Now difference between static initialization and instance initialization block in Java. Number one, known only as static initialization block in Java, also known as non-static initialization block in Java. Instance block or non-static initialization block, both are the same. Static blocks executes before instance block in Java. Instance block execute after the static blocks in Java. Only static variables can be accessed inside static block. Static and non-static variables, instance variables, can be accessed inside the instance block. Static blocks can be used for initializing static variables or calling any static method in Java. Instance blocks can be used for initializing instance variables or calling any instance method in Java. So these are the differences between static block and instance block. Now static block and instance block, more differences are: static blocks execute when class is loaded in Java. Instance block executes only when instance of class is created, not called, when class is loaded in Java. So instance block execute only when the object is created, and static block will be executed when the class is loaded by the loader. This keyword cannot be used in static block. This keyword can be used in the instance block. So what is this keywords and how to use this keyword we have already learned in my previous video lecture. If you don't know, you can go and watch this and super keywords video lecture, so you will clear all the concept of this and super keywords. Now we will talk about the drawbacks of static block. Number one, we cannot return anything from these blocks. From the static blocks we cannot return anything. Like from the method we can return integer or double float, we can return anything from the method, but we cannot return anything from the static block. Static blocks should not exceed for 64k, means in the static blocks you cannot write the 64k lines. Checked exceptions like IO exception cannot be thrown from the static block. This and super keyword cannot be used in the static block. So friends, it was all about the static keywords and static blocks. Thank you for watching this video lecture, and watch my next video lecture for learning new things in Java.